it appears that the Release the 28 Pages movement has succeeded, or is at least on the brink of success. We heard on Monday from an Obama administration source that the president is planning to finish the review process, presumably meaning he will declassify these pages before the end of his presidency. And now, this is Wednesday, and Nancy Pelosi has called for releasing the 28 pages. It does appear that it actually is quite likely to happen perhaps very soon. This is fascinating news. It will certainly cause more issues in the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, because it appears that the 28 pages primarily focus on the support from Saudi ruling circles for some of the alleged 19 hijackers who were, in fact, falsely blamed for the crimes of September 11th, 2001. And the real issue here, I think, is whether this will end up prying open the entire case of 9/11, or whether it will become a sort of limited hangout. It could be simply used to channel popular anger against the government of Saudi Arabia, perhaps create a little more distance in the U.S.-Saudi relationship, but not really change anything. And that would be a tragedy, because we need to reopen the entire 9/11 case here. The actual relationship between the Saudis and 9/11 is certainly not one of having the Saudi ruling family completely controlling the 9/11 attacks and in charge of the plot. That's ridiculous. Saudi Arabia is a U.S. puppet state. We know that the 15 hijackers who were Saudis, or the alleged hijackers, because they were not on those planes, not one of the 19 hijackers or any Arabs were on any of the 4 planes, according to the passenger list, and according to all of the evidence that would be there if they'd been on the planes has not been produced. These 15 Saudi Patsies who were set up to take the blame for 9/11 were, in fact, CIA agents. And we know this. I've had this confirmed directly by a CIA source, that these 15 Saudis entered and repeatedly re-entered the U.S. on these supposedly, they're called employment visas, but there's a special number for a type of employment visa that is only given to CIA assets as a reward for their service to the Central Intelligence Agency. And this visa allows them to come to the U.S. Typically, they're paid for their work for the CIA in Saudi Arabia, and then they're given this special kind of visa, which is disguised as an employment visa, but it's a particular kind. And all 15 of these guys had that visa that shows that they were, in fact, Central Intelligence Agency agents. Some of them were living with FBI people in California. So these 15 Saudis were not working against the United States government. They were working for the United States government. And they were set up so that Saudi Arabia could be potentially blamed for the September 11th attacks, which were actually perpetrated by Israel and its American assets. The purpose was to make sure that Saudi Arabia didn't leave the American orbit, as the king had threatened in August of 2001. Similarly, Pakistan was also set up. The ISI chief was tricked or ordered or whatever into sending money to Muhammad Atta, and then that was broadcast in an Indian newspaper. Pakistan likewise was threatening to leave the American orbit in 2001. Now, the Zionist-dominated imperial apparatus here in the United States didn't want nuclear Pakistan and oil-rich Saudi Arabia to become independent countries, so it used 9/11 to reel them back into the imperial orbit, among other things. But, of course, the chief purpose of 9/11, which was organized by the Israeli Mossad intelligence agency, was to destroy the 7 countries in 5 years that General Clark talked about that were enemies or threats to the state of Israel. Will this full truth come out thanks to the release of the 28 pages, which could lead to a reopening of the 9/11 case? Well, if it reopens, the fact that Building 7, and obviously the most obvious demolition in New York was Building 7, but the Twin Towers as well, these were controlled demolitions. There were no hijackers on any of these planes, not one Arab name on any of the planes, not one shred of evidence that any of them were on the planes. If these facts actually come out and we learn that September 11th was a cover and deception operation by Israel and its American assets, and that includes sort of quasi-assets like Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and so on. It was designed, it was a new Pearl Harbor. designed not only to destroy the Middle East for Greater Israel, but supposedly also to double the American military budget and reinvigorate the American empire. Well, it ended up killing the American empire. It certainly did help Israel. They've destroyed all their neighbors, virtually. But the United States is now in terrible shape. In order to turn America around, we really need to do what Donald Trump promised, which is to reveal to the American people who really knocked down the Twin Towers. And it was the Zionists. Once we learn that, we may be in a position to radically revamp the power structure here in the United States, taking it away from the Zionist-dominated corporate structure, the banking, investment industry, and the media apparatus, and take America back to the American people and the American empire, and usher in a new multipolar era of peace.